All right, so part 2 of section 1.2, looking at convenience sampling now. We finished off with cluster sampling in the last video. And convenience sampling, it's kind of like what it implies. It's convenient. When things are convenient, they're easy. But a lot of times when things are easy, they're not really the best. So as the name of this sampling technique implies, the basis of convenience sampling is to use whatever method is easy and convenient for the investigator. This type of sampling technique creates a situation where a random sample is not achieved. It's not random at all, and probably not very good. Therefore, the sample will be biased since the sample is not representative of the entire population. So if you ever have listened to radio and they're like, hey, call in with what you're thinking, well, that's pretty convenient for them. And the person that calls in may not be representative of the population. I see this on the news all the time where they just interview some random person on the street. It's like, well, it was pretty convenient, but maybe that person is saying things that really don't reflect the true feelings in the entire population. Surveys that you do at restaurants, if you've ever seen one of those satisfaction surveys, a Yelp, really, all those things where, it's just people are going in there and putting their feelings if they feel like it. Whenever you're calling for that, Yelp is all about convenience sampling. They're not going out and randomly selecting people who actually went to the restaurant. They're just saying, hey, if you went to the restaurant, come in here, sign up, and put in your thoughts about this restaurant on our website so we can make money. So convenience sampling doesn't always mean that you're getting a good representation. Now, I'm not saying that there's a lot of things bad all the time about some of those reviews, like if you're doing a product review, like I read them too. I want to see what other people have said about the product or the restaurant I'm going to. So, it's not that that's necessarily bad, but it may not truly reflect what the whole population is thinking. Because typically with those types, especially when you're doing reviews, it's people that felt very strongly about it, whether it was very strongly in the positive or very strongly in the negative. You are missing out on a whole part of the middle there. So, another type of convenience sampling, beyond those, satisfaction surveys or, reviews, things like Yelp or, calling in, something like this where a person, let's give an example here, goes to the closest fast food restaurant to do a study on people's favorite fast food. Convenient, but probably going to be biased towards the restaurant that you ended up at. If you're asking everybody at McDonald's, what's your favorite fast food? You're probably going to get a higher percentage of people saying McDonald's than if you were to go someplace else. So convenient, but not necessarily representative. And that's your goal with these sampling techniques. You want to try and get something that's representative. So simple random sample, going to eliminate that bias. Doing a cluster sample, stratified sample is going to help eliminate bias and maybe make sure that certain groups are represented, especially with stratified. With that one, you're taking a little from each predefined group. So you're making sure that everyone, like in that example, all the freshmen, there's going to be representation of them, representation of sophomores, juniors, seniors. So stratified sample can be really helpful with that when you want to make sure that you are getting representation from each maybe the main groups in a population. Cluster sampling is just, a way of, maybe breaking the population down and then having some preset little groups. So maybe if you want a sample size of 30 and you got a bunch of different clusters of size 10 out there, you randomly select 3 of them, take all 10, and then you've made your sample. Excuse me. So that is, at the heart of it, there's still random at stratified. There's still random in cluster. Convenience, there's no random, and there's a lot of bias in convenience sampling typically. So in this first example, and only example really of this section, what I want you to do is pause the video and try these 5 parts and go ahead and pause. All right, welcome back. So we're going to determine if the sample type is simple random sample, stratified sample, systematic sample, cluster sample, or convenience sample. So in a light bulb production factory, every 100th light bulb is taken off the assembly line and checked to see if it was manufactured correctly. Well, this is classic systematic. Every 100th bulb, as soon as you see that number where they're, telling you this is how we're going to do it, every 100th, every 10th, whatever it is, that's systematic, classic systematic. Okay, so next one here. A city is split up into 12 regions. Then 3 of the regions are randomly selected, and all of the residents within each of them are asked about their favorite thing to do on a Friday night. So they've broken the city into groups, these 12 regions, and then just 3 of them, some of them, are randomly selected, and all within are taken. So, there's 12 whole, 3 are chosen, and then all within each. That's cluster sampling, classic cluster sampling, where you break the population into groups and then take a few of those groups and take everything from within them to form your sample. A radio station asks listeners to call in and give their opinion about an upcoming election. A little bit more relevant right now, I guess, but, not so relevant since it's not upcoming anymore. But at any rate, this would be convenience. So convenience sampling all day long. No randomness. People are just calling in as they feel. Radio station person didn't have to do any work except say, hey, call in. Very convenient. Not very good, though. So let's see here. A group of people are divided into age groups, young, middle-aged, and old. A sample is taken from each age group. So here we're breaking the population into groups, and then a little is taken from each group. That's going to be stratified. So you got your 3 groups here, and then a sample, that's the key word, from each. All right, 50 people are randomly chosen from a list of residents to form a sample. Well, there's nothing in here about breaking them down into groups. Are they certain types of residents? There's nothing about that. There's nothing about, different buildings within the population that they might just select people from. So there's no grouping here. So as soon as you don't see any mention of grouping in any sort of way, it's not cluster, it's not stratified. And then there's nothing like where they take every 5th person off the list or something, so it's not systematic. And really the key word here is randomly selected, and then there's no mention of groups. So, both cluster and stratified add a random nature to them, but there's grouping that's happening there in some way. Whereas here, there's no mention of groups, it is random, so this would just be your simple random sample. All right, so at this point, you should be ready to go in and try the 1.2 homework. And, may not mention this all the time, but if you have questions about anything, please ask. It's really important they ask questions in this class in order to, make sure you're understanding things and, do well. So I will, quote unquote, see you in 1.3.